Good morning, and welcome to Coffee and Conversation, Insights from CIA on Cloud and Data. Now, please welcome INSA Vice President of Policy, Bishop Garrison.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our program. Today, we're excited to host not one, but two senior IC leaders. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping notes as always. If you have questions, and we hope that you do, please submit them through the questions box on the right side of your screen. I will do my best to get to as many questions as possible, I promise. We are pleased to welcome members of the press to this call. Please note that this program is open and on the record and being recorded. Lastly, a big thank you to Salesforce for their support of this three-part series focused on emerging technology and the innovation ecosystem. We could not bring this level of thought leadership to you without their support. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Bill Pessin, Senior Vice President, U.S. National Security, Defense, and Aerospace at Salesforce, who will introduce our speakers. Over to you, Bill.
Thank you, Bishop, and thank you to INSA for hosting this morning's terrific discussion. Salesforce National Security, a wholly owned subsidiary of Salesforce, is dedicated to our national security customers. We empower our U.S. intelligence community, defense, and industrial-based customers to meet their mission requirements through cutting-edge commercial cloud, platform, and software as a service enterprise solutions that are designed to meet the unique requirements of national security. Our solutions provide secure, compliant, agile, and innovative technology that supports the critical work of intelligence and defense professionals, providing them the capability they need on whichever fabric the mission takes them. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speakers. Joining us this morning is Larry Taxson, Chief of CLOUDworks in the CIA's Directorate of Digital Innovation. In this capacity, Larry leads the group delivering commercial cloud and government hosting solutions in support of mission needs. Larry recently served as the Directorate of Digital Innovation Chief of Staff, where he managed the day-to-day operations of the DDI front office, provided executive support to the Deputy Director of CIA for Digital Innovation and the Associate Deputy Directors, and managed enterprise planning and brought corporate oversight to numerous directorate-wide programs. Previous leadership roles include serving as the Chief of Digital Innovation for the Near East Mission Center, Senior Program Executive for Commercial Cloud Services, where he provided leadership to the IC towards the adoption of modern cloud computing services. Joining Larry is also Chris Bennight, Technical Director in the Agency Data Office. In this role, he ensures the integrity and robustness of technical solutions that support the CIA's mission. Prior to this, Chris was the Technical Director for the Artificial Intelligence and Data Analytics Division, overseeing solutions that address core data services and AI needs. Please join me in welcoming Larry Taxson and Chris Bennight.
Good morning.
Awesome. Good morning, and Bill, thank you again so much for that introduction. Larry and Chris, thank you for joining us. I know I said this in our digital green room here before we began, but we are truly thankful for your support. We know how busy you are given everything that's happening in the world, so thank you again for being here. Just to start us off right off the bat, Larry, for you first, as Chief of CLOUDworks, what are some of the key challenges and priorities that you hope to address in the next few years?
Great. Thanks, Bishop, and thanks for having us here. Both Chris and I, we appreciate the opportunity to provide our perspectives on questions on cloud and data. So let's talk about CLOUDworks. So CLOUDworks is our group at CIA, which provides both government hosting solutions as long as access to commercial cloud services through our C2E contract. So in CLOUDworks, we serve as the IC service of common concern for commercial cloud to allow our IC partners to leverage commercial cloud from our 5 CSPs, which are Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Google, and Oracle. So we have a lot that we're doing in CLOUDworks today. The way I look at the world and the way our group looks at the world is we've broken things into our strategic pillars. The first one is really around operationalizing C2E. And what that means is the ability for mission users to get access into all of our cloud service providers on multiple domains. So being able to bridge our networks, our accounting, our billing, our capabilities all into those environments, and then to start using them, right? So that's been really our big push over the last, several years under the C2E contract. We actually hit a major milestone this year in that all of our 4 main CSPs that live on our secret and TS domains have reached their initial operating capability and received their ATO from the IC. So now it's up to each agency to enable themselves into those environments. The second thing that we're looking at is next generation data centers and automation. So within CloudWorks, I oversee both cloud, but also on-prem. And so how are we going to look at data centers in the future, especially as we're seeing a little bit of repatriation of workloads coming back to data centers? When we start thinking about hybrid solutions, what does that look like in the data centers? And how do we begin to automate a lot more of the things that we're doing? Another strategic pillar is our trusting cloud. So one of the key things or key actions that we perform in CloudWorks is the assessment of cloud services aligned under our NIST control framework. So our team does the assessment before it goes up to approval and authorization to ICCIO. And then lastly, the big thing that I think that's going to help us from a community standpoint is to facilitate adoption. One of the taglines I've used over several years is, if you build it, they might not come unless you show them how. And that is still true today. So what we do within CloudWorks, our console area serves as a cloud center of excellence, which goes out and helps mission partners understand challenges, what are the capabilities that our providers are having. So that's from a priority standpoint, the way we're looking at the world. When I look at key challenges today, one of the things that I do want to highlight, one is the transition from C2S to C2E. I don't know if everybody knows, but we celebrated a huge milestone at the end of July. It was actually the end of the commercial cloud services contract, to me, which was one of the biggest innovation or digital innovations that the CIA and IC has done over its history. But we awarded C2E back in 2020 and C2S ended. But with that comes some challenges. The first one to me is actually training. So it's training our workforce to understand capabilities that our new providers are bringing with them, right? Yes, we have an incumbent that has been there, but what are our other CSP providers bringing? So how do we train, our staff officers? How do we train our partners in the systems integrator community, right? How do we get everybody on board with what's going on? But I think I dovetail that with legacy culture. So 10 years ago, the legacy culture to me and the challenge was going from on-prem to the cloud. People want to hug their servers, but now how do I get them to the cloud? And we've made great progress over the last 10 years. We are the leaders in federal government in cloud migrations when we were under C2S. But now our legacy culture is, I have one cloud, how do I go to multiple clouds? Right? How do we get people informed in what's going on there? And then last, what I would say is service parity. I think that's always going to be a challenge. We want to ensure that what we're bringing in from our providers, from commercial to secret to TS, right, is we have parity across. Because as our teams are starting to develop capabilities and the things we're doing, we want to make sure that it's all aligned and how we move it forward.
That's fantastic. So, so kind of to the connective tissue on here, you spoke a lot about data, and we have a data SME right here on the line with us. So, Chris, for you, can you kind of be some of the connective tissue here and tell us what some of your key challenges and priorities are as they relate to being the technical director over the agency data office?
Hey, yeah, thank you very much. So I think, thank you very much for the setup, Larry, as well. I think I'll pivot off a couple of those. One, you talked about a bit about sort of training as well as service parity. Right now, we're rolling out, I think, HC data strategy, right? It's a holistic capability to sort of empower the mission. And really, if I talked about what we're trying to achieve with that, it is that empowerment of consumers, people sort of doing mission exploitation. And a big portion of that is moving up the stack, right? Moving from, you have to bin middle, you have to rack servers, we move things in the cloud. And now logically, we're moving up from I have to manage and provision servers to I have mission questions that I want to ask of the data. And I think a great example of this is what we're seeing sort of with AI and LLMs right now. You see an ability for a person to come in and write, instead of having to master arcane search syntax or write code, they can put in a natural language question and say, I have this particular thing I want to ask of this data. I have this particular mission problem I'm looking to solve. And going back to the training and sort of service parity, right? This is all built on top of a lot of the offerings that our industry partners are bringing to us. And as those offerings sort of continue to evolve, we embrace state of the art over there. We need people who understand how to use those and how to apply them to the mission question, right? It's that chicken and the egg. The art of the promise is there, but you have to be able to see the opportunity and seize it. And that's something that we have to communicate, train, and also as we bring in new workforce, they're going to have sort of different experiences, different capabilities, and that's where that service parity is critical, right? We need the same tools that people are using out in industry, the same sort of advancements that are being delivered available to us in our mission with our data to use it. So I think that's where everything Larry's delivering is really critical to our strategy of data sort of enablement and empowerment.
Yeah, no, and it's clear how connected to hip, I guess, in terms of just being an intra-agency effort, you guys have to be in order to make sure that one hand is speaking to the other on a lot of these key topics. So continuing down this thread, so what are some of the key components of establishing a foundational resilience within the cloud, and how do these components impact the agency's ability to leverage AI and ML's machine learning algorithms and high performance computing effectively? Chris, I think you kind of hit on that to some degree, but can you expand on it a little bit for our audience?
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. So I think two aspects of that. One, I mentioned moving up the stack a little. I think this is advantageous and it allows people to sort of specialize and address their missions problems, but that foundational resiliency becomes even more key, right? As we abstract away more of the stuff, it becomes more critical for this massive foundation that we're building on to work properly, right? There's lots of moving parts, there's lots of things, there's lots of complexity in there. And it's critical that we sort of have that upfront architecture, engineering, and industry partnerships, so those foundational pieces work 24/7 because we have a 24/7 mission right now. And candidly, right, like nothing erodes trust faster in all of this than when those things break down. So I think one, to be able to really embrace and address that, we have to both build and continue to maintain trust and the ability to depend on the underlying infrastructure. I think the other aspect of that, right, is we talk specifically about AI, ML, and higher performance compute services. In some ways, right, we've seen industry trends where you have industry partners right now putting models behind APIs. There's this sort of natural composability you have that's driven basically by the fact that the backend services that we don't see behind these things are enormously complex, like huge server farms. We see all the industry investments over there. We see the great things our industry partners are delivering. That's all behind the scenes. This sort of architectural nexus on APIs has a benefit of making it very easy for us to use, right? It's the cost of evaluating it, embracing it, migrating to new solutions is much simpler because we're not managing that whole stack. So I think as long as we get the foundations right and we nail them reliability, this sort of migration we're moving actually makes it easier, surprisingly, for us to embrace these new technologies.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. To follow up on that point too, I actually wrote this down to make sure I'm following. So trust in the underlying infrastructure is something that you highlighted, and as you kind of mentioned there about how you'll be able to integrate the new technologies moving forward. So Larry, I want to come back to you for a second and just ask, how can leaders ensure that their approach to this cloud resiliency that we're discussing is both scalable and adaptable to the future technologies or mission shifts, kind of that Chris highlighted?
No, this is great. Chris definitely hit on the right things, in my mind. Resiliency for us is how do you architect in the cloud? As each agency is looking at what their options are that are out there, we work with the service providers to stand up, their various regions, in various locations. And so understanding capabilities that are in those regions, they need to understand how do you architect. I don't know if we as a community fully understand multi-regional, multiple cloud architectures, right? And how I can do failovers, or do I containerize a lot of my code so I can move it around to different options. The CSPs offer a variety of different solutions, whether I am looking at regional based compute, or maybe I'm doing more of a hybrid because I have my own on-prem, but I want to bring capabilities of the cloud in, or edge. That's a big thing that we're looking at along with our partners in DoD under the JWCC contract, is really the edge aspect of what's doing. How am I going to run or like inference models for AI, right, on edge? How am I going to containerize it? How am I going to do those things? So I think what we need to look at, when we start thinking about resilience, and even within DDI, within our IT enterprise, resiliency and conflict readiness is one of our top priorities. So we are looking at that specifically, but it really comes down to how am I architected? Do I have the right bandwidth, right? I think that's a challenge too, because you have to get connected into these different regions, and it just doesn't come out of the box, right? We have to do work to actually connect our core specific networks into these different cloud providers and the option. And that's just our agency. And when I look across the IC, that's 18 others having to do the same thing. So there's some complications that come with it, but I think as we start seeing what our providers have there today, as we continue to communicate our requirements to our providers, hopefully we'll look at a proper ecosystem of what we are seeing moving forward, especially, under the leadership of ICCIO. I appreciated Dr. Merritt's comments a couple of weeks ago on this same forum. And we talked about the IC architecture and the strategy moving forward, whether it's data and cloud or all those other areas. So looking holistically as a community of how we're going to use these capabilities will help drive us towards better resiliency.
Yeah, and I think you make some excellent points here, and continue to just jot things down as I come out and I hear them. But you talk about just the mission evolving, about the technology evolving, and we look back. The Digital Innovation Directorate was established just not even quite 10 years ago. You're coming up on your 10-year anniversary next year in 2025. So. And it was the first directorate that the agency had in more than 50 years. So how is this mission continuing to evolve since the directorate's been established? And if you could, and this is really for both of you, for Larry to start though, but what are some of the key accomplishments that you believe you're witnessing, that you've realized, I should say, over the course of this span of a decade?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely proud to be part of DDI. As you heard from my bio, before I was running CLOUDworks, I was the chief of staff for the directorate. So I was at the top of the directorate, watching our leaders drive, mission forward in support of our digital work. And then I also served as our chief of digital innovation for the Near East Mission Center. So having an understanding of digital capabilities in support of the mission in the Middle East or Northern Africa, so digital to me is very important. I'll give a little anecdote. When we would go out into various locations in TDY, our boss would always get asked, is human dead? Because, you have all these digital capabilities coming on. And what her response was always, no, human's not dead. It's just harder to get the secrets. But what we do see is that you will see a better blend of human with digital coming together, whether that's in targeting or whether that's in cyber or other areas. But to me, really, DDI it's the ones and the zeros of our mission, if I put it in binary speak, right? We looked at all of these digital capabilities across CIA and said we needed to house these together because we create better synergies, whether it's in the IT enterprise and the things we're doing with cloud, or the things that we're doing with our digital experience, the things that we're doing with our communications and looking towards the future like I said, for resiliency, whether it's the work that we brought together, both offensive and defensive cyber together within the same directorate to help inform each other. You know, yes, we have mission to do and everything, but protecting our systems is also important. And so really a big push in the work that we do with cybersecurity. I'll let Chris in a sec talk about the wonderful work that ADO is doing with the deluge of data that we have to go through on a day-to-day basis, some of the things we've been doing in data science. But when we talk large amounts of data, and really what's changed, I'd say, over the last 10 years is open source. You know, so the open source enterprise, you know, lives within DDI. So OSINT, you know, still to us is the INT of first resort. You know, if I can get something that's publicly available and make sense of it and do some analysis against it, you know, we want to take it from open source. And they've, to be honest, have been trailblazers in the world of cloud because they can do a lot of things on the unclassified fabrics. And so they have access to modern tools and capabilities today, where within C2E on the high sides, you know, we got to wait for services to come in and we accredit them. So really OSE is doing some big stuff. But where this is all going to culminate, and you heard me talk about this at the spring symposium, like our North Star for DDI is human and machine teaming, right? How do we get to the point where we are leveraging our AI capabilities and partnering that with our open source data, with our cyber information to enable our analysts to, you know, work more efficiently, right? And have stuff at their fingertips and able to work with data from a, like Chris was saying before, from a natural language approach. So that to us, you know, I'd say over the last, you know, almost 10 years, humongous strides in DDI and pushing our digital and DDI mission forward. But Chris, if you have a sec, can you please highlight maybe some areas within ADO that you've seen advances, especially maybe in the data science area?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Larry, and thank you very much for the great sort of DDI overview there. So drilling in a little to ADO, or the Agency Data Office right now, right? When DDI was set up, we also established the Agency Data Office. The Chief Director, Chief Data Officer role was established at the agency too. And I think if a lot of people here probably remember, if you think back to that time, this was sort of like the era of big data, Hadoop, the slides everyone saw with the elephants, all the project, the multiple V's you were talking about. And I think at that point we recognized, right, those same V's, right, the volume, variety, veracity of data as it's coming in. This is something that we need to get a handle on. And I think there was a recognition, right, that there's not a silver bullet solution. Instead, we need those same foundations here, sort of like on the skills and the organization side. How can we understand data as it evolves? How can we understand data science, data engineering, data governance, data exploitation, which is kind of how the ADO is broken up to right now. So those foundations got laid. And I think that's one thing that's, I think has continued to serve us well as the ecosystem changes, right? Like I came up from the data science side, so it's near and dear to my heart. And we've seen the explosion right now in AI. It's pretty hard to miss right now with large language models. And I think some of the capabilities that they bring, again, to push the mission problem, sort of like push the ability to leverage all this tooling, leverage all these capabilities closer to how analysts, how people who work with the data, who drive that mission, want to ask the questions, right? We're not having to train them in something arcane. We're letting them to express their business problem, their mission problem, and give them an answer. And I think ADO, right, and DDI, right, establishment of it and standing up sort of like that data science cadre, the data engineering capability, the data governance capability, and the data exploitation capability. I think those foundations have really set us well going forward.
And I thank both of you for kind of giving us a very clear overview as we've really been able to engage a lot of this material. And for the audience, just a reminder, we're going to be asking a lot of your questions here towards the end in the next few minutes. So please remember to continue to submit them. We've already gotten several great ones and we want to see more. So Larry, you began and you mentioned Dr. Merritt, and we had an excellent conversation with her just late last month. I recommend folks going back and watching the video. It was really fantastic. But and she spoke a lot about the OD&I roadmap, and she highlighted the importance of evolving kind of what you alluded to into a single cloud provider from a single cloud provider to an IC environment with multiple providers and services. So having the ability to have a lot of these efforts integrated. And I know you and I on more than one occasion have talked about the move towards, more a hybrid cloud solution and some of the pieces that would go into that effort. So from your perspective at the CIA, what are some of the next steps for optimizing the cloud environment to ensure operational success? And let's start with you, Larry, and then we can go over to Chris for his thoughts from the data perspective.
Yeah, definitely. This is a brave new world for us, right? I had mentioned before, we became really great in federal government, as far as single cloud, migrations. When you looked at the numbers, compared to what industry or what other government agencies were doing in single cloud migration, we were dwarfing them. But this is a whole new world for us, right? Of how do we get to multiple clouds? And I don't know if people are picking up on the language. I'm not saying multi-cloud, I'm saying multiple clouds, because I feel like in the beginning phase of this, we're going to go really to multiple clouds. We're going to go to a certain provider for a niche type of capability, and all of our CSPs bring their strengths in certain areas. So we're going to look at that there. The concept of multi-cloud, where I really have an integrated cloud fabric, right, that one system is leveraging, not seeing that too much today in the commercial sector. We'll see how we apply that here. I will give one use case though where I can see that happening is maybe in the AI space, where I want to have API calls to different AI models that are hosted with different providers. Maybe there's a way to bring that together. But for us, the first part is really going to be on enablement and understanding capabilities to get to that multiple cloud effort. So like I had mentioned before, we are currently in the enterprise enablement phase for all of the CSPs, specifically at CIA. We are working towards getting Microsoft, Oracle, and Google enabled fairly soon, and so that will give our agency access to all of those capabilities. But I think it goes back, Chris has been saying it really well in his line, is that we have to understand the needs. What are we trying to do? What is mission trying to do? I don't want to shoehorn something in which doesn't make sense. So our console area within CloudWorks, like that's their job. We have a contract within console called SIM. It's a cloud investment multi-cloud management contract, which is supposed to be this non-biased view of the CSPs to help mission begin to look at options and help architect out solutions. But the other things that we've tried to do as well is bring mission closer to our CSP partners by holding certain events, where we engage or we hold panels, we hold lots of discussions, we do things at different conferences, right? We really want to get teams together to understand needs. Yeah, you can tell me you want a specific service in a CSP, I get that, but we'd much rather hear of your use case, right? And then work collectively, as a group. We also try to do outreach amongst the other IC elements. We hold a consortium every quarterly with the key cloud enablers from each IC element. So we want to understand what challenges they have, and maybe someone similar is having the same thing. So we really push forward in that concept of facilitate adoption, but there's still some areas that I could see us still exploring. I think under C2E, it is an IDIQ contract, right? It forces competition. So teams really have to, it's very different than what C2S was. So understanding, teams on how you do an IDIQ, how do you write, a competitive award and a task order, right? We provide some guidance in that. We're standing up a FinOps discipline, within our area to better understand cost in cloud, because what you're seeing 10 years later, even though I said we're the leaders in federal government cloud migration, I don't know if we were the smartest transitioners out there. A lot of it was lift and shift, and now we're seeing a lot of technical debt that's out there or cost spikes. So how do we better architect solutions for financial aspects? And then last but not least, it's all going to be about Gen AI, right? So Chris mentioned that. So we are actually working very closely with our CSP partners today to see how we can get commercial LLM models up into our high side environments, hopefully by the end of this year or early next year. So we're not waiting 3 years like traditionally you would in government. We're really pushing on this to get modern capabilities in the hand of mission partners as soon as we can. So really excited about that. And I think if we hit along all those lines, we'll start to envision this multiple cloud world. I really think 2025 to 2026 is going to be huge in the way that we are pushing multiple clouds forward.
Chris, please, anything to add here?
Yeah, I just want to foot stomp a little, I guess, where Larry started with sort of the best of breed and what additional adoption looks like. I think absolutely that's how it's looking for us in the ADO as well too. Step one is not going to be a full Netflix, Chaos Monkey, and multi-cloud resilient type capability. That's absolutely a strategic goal, right? But it's a journey to get there. So I think what we're looking at right now is, as we have this diversity in services, right? Who are the leaders in different areas? Who are the leaders in OCR? Who are the leaders in translation? Who are the leaders in compute? And I think not to forget GPUs, right? Like we know the challenge around getting GPUs. Those are sort of a fundamental driver for a lot of the technology we talk about. And they're a resource under contention right now. So where can we get those? Where can we use those? And I think that's where we're really going to see some of this early adoption. And I think what's really cool here is there's an appetite for it, right? People are looking for these things. So I think when Larry's contract goes live, right, when we get these capabilities in, I think candidly adoption is going to be easier in a lot of these places. There's going to be less of a push, right? Inertia. There's an open appetite over here. People want to take advantage of these services. And I think that's really going to help them dip their feet in, start working these clouds. And once we get expertise, once we have capabilities of their clouds, then I think the rest follows. So I'm excited.
Let me piggyback on that real quick. And perfect, right? I think what we're going to see in the community, and I hope that I see in the community, is we're going to get a couple of trailblazers in these new environments, which then I would love for them to share success stories. Right? How did you do that? Why are you using that provider? What worked? What didn't? And so we're trying to create that forum, especially on Gen AI. And going back to the GPU thing, right? I don't know if people know, we have a lot of GPU availability within C2E today, but are we going to really need tons of GPUs, right? I think people have this vision of commercial LLMs and we're going to have it on the high side and all this stuff. Like, do we really, right? We're not going to suck the whole internet up, into the high side, but are we going to look at more SLMs, like small language models that are going to be on niche topic areas, right? What are we going to need to do that? Do I need GPUs or TPUs to train those, right? These are the questions we need to be asking now. Those are the areas where mission needs to get smarter and understanding the ask, right? Because the last thing we want to do is keep pushing our CSP providers to give us all these capabilities and then they stay dormant, that nobody uses them, right? We really want to bridge mission need to really what is the CSPs need to provide.
This is fantastic. And I know we're coming up on, we've got just under 15 minutes left. So I want to go ahead and get to a few audience questions now. And we'll see if we have some additional time. We can come back to a few others. But first off the bat is about talent, and this is something, Larry, that you hit on a little earlier on. The ubiquitous talent challenge question kind of is the CSPs are so complex with a myriad of services and capabilities that it is almost impossible to keep your talent up to speed with the capabilities and the pace of change. How do you deal with the multi cloud within this system?
A great question, and it's a big problem that we see. Especially cleared resources are tough, to keep, especially if like good benefits are out there and so on and so forth, and understanding what's out there. So what we've been asking our CSPs to do actually is to really push and drive training options, both to staff officers, but also to our systems integrator community. Right? We really want them to get out there and educate our partners on what all these capabilities are, because there is, we hope to see people across the community at all the conferences that are going. There's lots of great training, certifications, staying on top of stuff. But the other thing we've been looking at too is, when we bring all these clouds in, is someone going to know them all, right? They're all different. So things that we've been looking at are abstract layers. Right? Can we bring in another set of tools that actually sit above the clouds that allow us to provision capabilities right through one pane of glass? So all I have to learn really is that tool, and it will do all the underlying, spinning up of compute and storage and networking, all of that stuff. So we've been looking at both. How do we train the workforce just in the fundamentals of each of the CSPs? But also, how do I build abstraction layers above it, as we move forward? Chris, I don't know, what are you guys doing in ADO, do you think?
I think right now, training pipelines from the industry and sort of depending on really the big strategic enabler we got with C2E, and that when I want to get that training, when I want to bring in talent, it's not in arcane governance system 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you never heard of before. It's in as close as we can, and that's right where that parity piece is key, industry standard system. So right, it's not a silver bullet, but I want to recognize that the bar has definitely been raised. We still have the same type of challenges, and frankly, I think they're always going to be enduring, but C2E, I think, represents a big strategic shift that has let us ask a question that I think we can hopefully get an answer to, right? Like, I need people, I need a clear person who has expertise in these, and exactly what Larry talked about, right? Continuing to put those abstractions, continuing to have layers to over the systems to simplify some of the stuff is key. We wouldn't be there if we weren't having this discussion right now. So no silver bullets, but yeah, we're working.
Keep learning.
Chris, this is another question I think that goes hand in hand with what you just said, and you've kind of already hit on a little bit, but could you please address the challenges in using the product's features from multiple C2E vendors to meet a mission need? For example, loading data into Google, processing using AWS, applying Microsoft or IBM AIs for analysis, and then storing the results in Oracle.
I could jump in on that real quick. I feel like a bit of a broken record, but on sort of these higher order AI services, we're literally doing some of that right now, right? We have evaluations for particular mission problems for this particular translation language pair, which model works the best for these other types of questions. And that allows us to, from sort of a large menu of available services, pick which one is most efficiently and best answering sort of the mission problems over there. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I mean, I think, yes, absolutely. That's one of the intents we're looking to do with making all these services and capabilities available. I guess one other aspect on that from the data side, Larry talked about this back at the beginning, but sort of the network, the bandwidth, the interconnectivity. When we go back to sort of more foundational things, right? Spark, large jobs, we have to get compute and we have to get data co-located together. And if data is in one cloud and compute is in another cloud, the first thing I'm going to dig into and look to is what kind of bandwidth do I have between the two? What is my cost model between doing it, that kind of stuff. So I think these are all areas that working with CLOUDworks right now to sort of understand where we're prepared, where the gaps are, and what we can do to move the bar forward.
Larry, anything there?
No, I think Chris definitely hit the part I was going to hit there. Was it comes down to architecture, right? How are we architecting it? Like, why am I in 5 clouds, right? For that, right? You'd have to think like, why, am I doing this? But can I be architected correctly, with having the bandwidth and costs associated to it? I was reading a great article a couple of weeks ago, this movement on, if we know lean principles like Lean Six Sigma and everything, there's this new called Lean AI. Right? And how am I looking at deploying AI models out there, and how am I looking at it from a cost perspective? And so we'll have to see how that works and what makes sense. Like, in theory, yeah, I could do all these things in the clouds, but when it comes to cost and shrinking budgets and everything, my mind is, how do I become more efficient in the cloud? Right? How do I optimize more in the cloud? How to become more mature in the cloud in the things that we're doing? That's what I think we're going to see moving forward.
Well, to that end, I think this question kind of goes hand in hand with it for my audience member, for my Tony Adamson. Do you see a strategy shift to move away from large data lakes to dealing with data where it sits, parentheses, at the edge, quote unquote, at the edge?
Chris, I'll let you handle that and I'll give you my theory on.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I wouldn't say away from, but I would say in addition to. I think there continues to be, and I don't think anytime soon we're getting away for sort of like the need, the value, and what we get for some of these big central data lakes. But right, bandwidth is limited. The amount of data is increasing, sort of like the ever-present challenges we have. So when we can take advantage of the ability to do that edge computing, right? Like we can trove through petabytes of data to find the terabytes or gigabytes or whatever that's relevant to us and move that all back. I think that's what I mean by in addition to. That sort of central data lake, right? A lot of the value we get here comes from data fusion, joining data together, and that's probably not something that's going to happen at the edge. So I think we're always going to have that use case for that central location. What we want to do is basically increase the signal and reduce the noise that's in that central location, and that's where I think the edge computing really comes into play.
Yeah, exactly. I think, once again, I'm a futurist when I think about these things, and I think 5 years or 10 years down the road, what is the architecture going to look like? Things are going to be much smaller. So what are the things I'm going to be able to do on the edge, right? Am I ever going to train like large models on an edge? Maybe not, but maybe I have smaller regions that are deployable that I can do those types of things. I think what you're also going to see is maybe from a physical standpoint, these large, data lakes look a little different. I think what you're going to see more is capabilities that can span queries against different data repositories and munge all of that together without moving your data so much, right? If we see those types of capabilities coming forward, I think that will do well. So when you look at the data strategy that Lori Wade put out of ICCIO, our data strategy, I think you're going to see a lot of these sort of changes, but it's especially as we bring all these new capabilities in. I keep going back to like a broken record. It's how we architect. And I think when I look back to skills, I think looking at pure systems engineering and architecture in cloud, not understanding capabilities, but how I would just lay it all out, especially when you start looking at comms, when I start looking at terrestrial satellite as a communication path, right? All these other things, how does that all fit together? What is that big picture? That's what we need to figure out.
So this is going to have to be our last question, kind of in a pretty a rapid fire here. And you guys have just been absolutely tremendous providing your expertise and experience and knowledges on all of these. So to kind of close this out, Nicole Dennis asks, this refers back to something you mentioned, Larry, at the beginning. What is human-machine teaming, and how can this combination enhance intelligence analysis?
Yeah, great. So like I said, at DDI, that's like one of our big things that we're pushing for is this concept of human machine teaming. So when I look at the world of an analyst, right, what can I do, we're bringing this data in, are we ever going to rely on AI to do the analysis? No, right? That's our core thing that we do. I just see it as an enabler. But could, AI help us with ideation, right, on a specific topic? Can it do counter arguments to the things that I'm pushing forward? Can it help us categorize better and do really optical search, better on the things that we're looking at? Could it help us with writing aids, right? You see co-pilots out there for doing just regular coding, but our analysts have a certain language that they adhere to, right? So can I put a paper together and say, transfer this into more of our analytic dialect, right? There's a lot of things that we can do. We sort of see this as, I don't like using the word co-pilot, but some of this partner with you. When I log in the morning, right, I have my sort of my Iron Man fans out there, my Jarvis, right, that's on my computer.
I love it.
I have my Jarvis there, right, that's helping me, right? So I'm in the driver's seat, but I'm using this human machine teaming to help me with maybe some tasks that are menial that I don't want to do on a day-to-day basis, or maybe it's raising stuff up for me today. We're already seeing this in action a little bit today on the open source side, right? They have a tool called Osiris, right, which really helps our open source analysts look at this deluge of data and bring things up to the forefront, leveraging LLM. So we're starting to see there, but I think we still have a bit to go. Chris, what do you think?
And yeah, Chris, we've got about like 1 minute. So if you can give your thoughts on that question and any closing thoughts before I pass it back to Larry, please.
Well, I'll be easy here, Larry. I think he pretty much nailed it. It's about ensuring we're using all this tech, the machine, right, to address our mission problems and to help the humans answer the question they're trying to do, instead of saying, what is it easy for the tech to do? And let's just deploy that. We're avoiding getting bent around that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Larry, any closing thoughts for you quickly?
No, just like to say thank you for having us again. Always like to push our message on cloud and data and what we are doing. One, as our service of common concern to the IC, but specifically what we're doing in CIA. So our community that's out there, we're true believers in public-private partnerships and helping our mission move forward. So anything that you need or questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to see if we can help.
Yeah, thank you both again. We cannot thank you enough for joining us and giving us the level of depth and expertise just in your remarks is just truly sensational, and we're really thankful. And thank you for all joining us. A big thank you to Salesforce for sponsoring this program, and to everyone online to watching, tuning in. When the webinar ends, you will receive a short survey. Please take a moment to complete it. It'll appear on the screen, and let us know how we did. Looking ahead quickly, tomorrow we kick off the first of a two-part INSA Foundation series on the future of the IC workforce, technical and talent transformation. The first installment features Joe Ellen Atkins, Deputy Director of NGA's Human Development Directorate, Lauren Bean-Buda, founder and CEO of Girl Security, and Aaron Bodrowski, Senior Vice President, Intelligence and Homeland Security at GDIT. Lindsay Kaiser, a dear friend of INSA from Clearance Jobs, will moderate the discussion on diversifying the talent pipeline, innovating recruitment and retention initiatives, skill-based hiring, work outside the DMV, and much, much more. Next week, we're heading to Denver for our two-part unclassified and classified program. We start on Wednesday, September 11th with a career fair from 3 to 5 p.m., followed by a welcome reception and fireside chat with Jenna Seidel, Director of NSA CSS Colorado. The evening will conclude with a dessert networking reception. The following morning, we will hold a classified discussion focused on space-based threats. If you're in the Denver area, we hope you can join us for one or both events. On September 16th, we will conclude the Future of the IC Workforce series with a virtual discussion featuring Kim King, from DIA, and the Honorable John Sherman, former DoD CIO and current Dean of Texas A&M's Bush School of Government and Public Service. And then finally, for two more during the month, on September 25th, we will host Skiff After Hours with Trey Treadwell, the NGA Associate Director for Capabilities. That is a classified event from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. We will cover acquisition flexibilities, Project Luno, and more. Plus, we will have an audience Q&A for that session. And finally, on September 26th, we hope you will join us for our next Coffee and Conversation with Director Rick Muller, Director of IARPA, hosted by me, Bishop Garrison, once again. Where we'll discuss emerging tech, challenges in the innovation ecosystem, and enterprise solutions to strengthen American competitiveness and more. You can learn about all of these programs on our website, insaonline.org. That concludes today's program. Thank you so much for joining us, and we truly hope you enjoy the rest of your day.